You know, I actually went to 4 different colleges in my life, so I'm not necessarily the best commencement speaker here for you, but I think you knew that when you invited me. My first college was down the road at Yale, and in my class was George Bush, 2 Olympic gold medal winners, a pro football star, several billionaires and millionaires who now have a big say in our destiny. We had Pulitzer Prize winners, a future Secretary of State, et cetera, et cetera. What I'd call the Obama School of Ivy League geniuses. But the truth for me was that at Yale, it was painful. It was so incredibly difficult academically and competitive in all things that my 4 grueling years at a preparatory school in Pennsylvania were not sufficient to compete. And the freedom given by the college was far too liberal for my discipline. Basically, all of a sudden we were on our own. Study when you want, eat, sleep when you want, do what you want. Go to New York City for a week, it doesn't matter. No one really cares as long as you pass the course. That was the point. No one cared. There was no headmaster around to scare the shit out of you. And I barely survived the first year. I failed Greek, and I just made it through the most abstract course I ever took in economics. And after trying, I failed to make any of the serious athletic teams, which really disturbed me. I was just another mediocrity, and I quit school, shaken and depressed. I went to Asia, Vietnam specifically, for almost a year to teach school and work in the U.S. Merchant Marine as a wiper in South China Seas. Then I gave Yale another try for half a year. And again, I was profoundly disappointed in myself. Mr. Bush could get C's and party and get through it all, and with a pedigree, he could become president. But I had no pedigree, and I think more importantly, I couldn't stand any longer the air of Ivy League superiority and competition. There was a lack, essentially, of humanity. A compulsive need to outdo your fellow. I wanted something gentler, something like I'd seen in Asia, an ability simply to breathe a natural life. So I abandoned school once again, but it was clear this time that I was not going back. In fact, I'd failed every single one of my courses. That's pretty hard to do, 4 zeros out of 4. Dad was pissed. Some 9,000 down the drain, no tax deduction here. And what would I do for the rest of my life? That's the big question. He expected me to go to Wall Street, as he was, at the least, sort of an idiot's son like Bush. Or at worst, a steady job at AT&T in New York, starting at a couple $100 a week. I went home and hid my face from my dad's friends, who'd known me as a promising conservative young man. I was a bum now. In my eyes, as well as in my dad's. I had no real skills or earning power. So I decided I had nothing to lose. So I joined the Army, specifically the infantry, and go to the front lines in Vietnam. And if it was intended by the Greek gods or the monotheistic God from the Bible, either way, I was putting it on the line. The divine forces would cast a decision, and either I would live or die. And it was literally on my 21st birthday. I suspect many of you here are 21 or close. I was on a plane bound for Vietnam, a second time. All 120 of us in Army khaki with buzz cuts. I never even had a 21st birthday. As we crossed the international date line, my birthday dropped away into the sea as the calendar jumped today. It was like an omen. I'd never get to be 21. I'd be lost in some crack of time in Vietnam. After 15 months of, let's say, another kind of world, I went back to the US with no idea of what to do and no skills except camping, surviving, hunting, and not sleeping very well. I'd taken a few electronics courses through a college extension program. I talked with some Army buddies about opening a construction company down in Alabama, or maybe Latin America, getting contracts from the government, and all that fantasy died on the return. My buddies went to other small towns and cities in the country, and rarely did we see each other again. This reality, along with something we didn't know much about at the time, since called PTSD, left us each in some dark holes. People simply didn't understand because that war was crazy and made no sense. How can you explain it when it makes no sense? After months of low-level depression, an old school friend who'd graduated from Yale was pursuing a career making low-budget porno films and making money at it. He told me I could actually go to one of these new film schools and I could get 80% of my tuition paid from the GI Bill. It sounded nuts to me. You mean I can actually get credit for watching movies all day? It was too good to be true, but it was a new world. And I'm glad I skipped 3 years to get back into that new world, because if I'd gone in 1965, there were no film schools. There were respected schools in California, but now NYU had one too. So I thank you. I mean it. The US government gave me a shot, second shot, and I went to NYU. But it was really a vocational school for me. I was older than the others. It was difficult for me to readjust to the mentality. I was quiet and didn't mingle much. These students were in another world, and they probably looked at me like I was the guy in Taxi Driver who ends up blowing away the class. But I had fun there. I also learned the beginnings of a skill. And then after 6, 7 years of professional rejection and writing a lot of speculative screenplays, making low-budget films, breaks started coming my way. And I actually made it into the film business with some success. In fact, much to my father's inability to think it possible, I actually started to make a living at this film thing. I think a point to be made of this experience is no matter how dark it gets early on, don't get too down on yourself. You have, you may not know them, hidden talents, skills, passions. You simply cannot recognize it yet. So listen to the wind. The answer might be blowing right past you. But although I now had a degree and some success, I didn't really have an education. Learning a trade is not a complete experience. I was partly educated writer-director who'd never really studied with any rigor history, mathematics, English, science. All I had was curiosity, and thank God for that. So, almost 40 years later, like Rodney Dangerfield in Back to School, in 2008, I went to my third college. Not your normal campus with bells beautifully tolling and the cries of young people in the air, but a concentrated 5-year journey through American history from the 1890s to today. Guiding me was a highly intelligent mentor and professor at American University and his staff of graduate students. In fact, he's here today, my co-author of The Untold History of the United States, Professor Peter Kuznick, who's There you go, Peter. That's for you. Who's been teaching this for 30 years. I learned a lot, too much in many ways to function well in this culture. I learned how to check and recheck everything, every little detail. I learned how to doubt and cross-examine myself. It took us almost 5 years and many drafts and edits to make our incredible thesis entertaining enough for a wide audience uninterested in history, able to watch it on a prestige cable company or read the 700-page book we wrote to back it up. That millions ended up watching it and continued to watch it for 10 weeks, and that it made the New York Times bestseller lists, and that it was sold in many countries in the world, and we traveled to numerous colleges and high schools to share it, was proof enough to me that I'd finally earned my self-declared and really proud of it college degree in history. And why not? The thing that people don't realize is that history can be fun, that the narrative can be taught with great sweep and power, like a movie, not a museum. Nor need it be a Disney movie, the way it's taught now, which is mostly a pat on the back for being a great and special country, singular in history and particularly blessed by God. That's why young people have so often turned away from American history. They can smell lies and hypocrisy. Well, needless to say, it was quite controversial and often ignored, because that's the price you pay to say something strong in this country. I'm proud to tell you our mainstream media blasted it or ignored it, because that's the same media, you know them all, the biggies, that's the same media that since Vietnam have helped cheer us on into so many pathetic wars without any purpose or validity, and yet never apologize for their mistakes. And then a few years later, they move on and recommend another set of disastrous choices that lead to war. Where did this ongoing delusion start? This was the main point of our series, and why so many progressive historians praised it as a work that brought an entire century into one tent with its recurring patterns of militarism, false patriotism, racism, sexism, and financial greed. All because we never learned from our past, because we never looked deeply in elementary or high school. And we went with this mythology that we were somehow exceptional and outside history. And as a result, over time, our memories became clouded, the history distorted by the politics of the powerful school boards in Texas and California. And over these 80 years since World War II, we began on a grand scale to truly lose our collective memory of what we've done in the world without recognizing the consequences or apologizing, including, to begin with, the militarily unnecessary atomic bombing of Japan. As a result, your generation suffers all the consequences of this. And you accept that since 9/11, a policy of unending war is a necessary and endurable thing. Policies of torture, detention, drones, and undeclared wars, interfering in the affairs of every country in the world, every country, and declaring unilateral regime change as if we were gods. This has given us an overwhelming arrogance that lives inside the skin and brain of the power elite in Washington, D.C. The feeling that the state itself has the right over its own citizenry to break the laws as it chooses, and most egregiously violate the Fourth and Fifth Amendments in the name of defending our national security. In doing that, we lose sight that security at any cost is a prison for all of us without end, a panopticon that cows us all to surrender our sense of protest, of individuality, of privacy itself to this anonymous secret state that has eyes on us all. This is the triumph of force over liberty. This is naked fascism. Dress it up however you like. And this has nothing to do with the country I was born in and went to war for as a young conservative man. Please don't ever forget that Edward Snowden was 29 years old when he challenged this system on behalf of us all. Just a few years older than you. He's an avatar for your generation. Now don't be cynical and say, privacy, so what? I have nothing to hide. Because when you're older, you might understand what you're surrendering without knowing it is your greatest secret of all. Yourself. I told you I went to 4 colleges, but maybe I exaggerated a bit. Because the 4th college is one you never graduate from. I call it the college of older age. It is the toughest of all because it makes you question everything. It teaches those who listen the necessity for ambiguity in life's grayer matters, nothing being black or white. And it humbles us in ways we have never been before. I'm sure in your lifetime, you'll see things we never thought would happen. As we were surprised by these wars, by JFK, RFK, MLK assassinations, the theft of the 2000 election, 9/11, the incorporation of the Citizens United Supreme Court decision, allowing money, once again, to suffocate our voices. More will happen to you in the same way that everybody through all the centuries feels that theirs is the most important time of all. But I still believe that we've been given a divine blessing to be alive in this world. And I believe the purpose of our journey is to grow into consciousness, to grow into tolerance, and finally, we hope, love. This purpose allows us to act badly at times, to indulge ourselves, and hopefully discover our mistakes and our regrets. And with it comes an allowance for weakness, our weakness and our strengths, because both are so similar. Enjoy what you can. And in closing, I'd suggest you all take a year off and do nothing. Even you Asians, be a bum. Be a bum. My father, the same aforementioned father, when I was very young, I saw a picture of my dad during the Depression, and he went out and was a bum for 2-3 weeks. And he didn't look like my dad. He had a beard and he looked like a ragged overcoat sleeping in the park. And I wondered, this man, why did he do it? I think we all have to do that. Do something you've never done before. If you choose nothing, see for yourself if being a lazy person, like my daughter, works for you or bores you. Sit on a bench, walk around, fish. But go to the end of that feeling and find out for yourself what laziness is, what boredom is. Be a janitor, clean hotel rooms, work with your hands, learn how to plant, grow, cook, travel to foreign countries, second, third class, and see how you relate to all kinds of people and challenges. Above all, even if you want to make a fortune as quickly as you can, I urge you to break your pattern here and now, and don't do what you did for the last 4 years. So, please go in peace, love, justice, and mercy, and do well by this world. Thank you.